to work there, running a charitable garden, working with food insecure people in the community. After that, I went and worked at the Pennsylvania Department of Ag, where I worked in the Bureau of Markets, running the PA Preferred by Local program for, at the time, Secretary Gregg. And then when Secretary Redding, who's the current secretary there, came to the department, he asked me to run their agricultural affairs program, their ag tourism program, where I worked with 4-H and FFA members in the community and agricultural affairs. I did that for a few years, and then I went to Penn State Law School, where I graduated in May. And Dr. Glenn and the policy team asked me to come on and work on the Plant and Pesticide Committee and the Food Systems and Nutrition Committee, which has been a lot of great work. And I just wanted to, again, give special thanks to Commissioner Hulbert and Nathan and Director Kettler and their teams. They've made my transition onto this committee wonderful and have been great to work with. And I'm excited to work with the rest of the NASDA members as well. So that's enough about me. And Director Kettler, if you'd like to take over the agenda again, that'd be great.
Glad to, and we thanks Zach. As Commissioner Hurlburt mentioned, Zach's just been a real great addition. He's jumped right in, full-fledged. Said, what do we need to do? What do we need to help you with? And that's certainly appreciated, as we know all the NASDA staff does that on a regular basis. So thank you. We appreciate it. Okay, at this time, we've got, as I mentioned, we've got a special guest that we want to bring to the committee, and Carrie Meadows, who is the Agriculture Advisor to EPA Administrator. And Carrie is relatively new to the role. We'll let her introduce herself and talk a little bit about kind of the state of where things are with EPA. And Carrie, we want to welcome you on behalf of this committee and the commissioners, secretaries, and directors of agriculture. We know that having this communication with EPA is critical, particularly to this committee, but certainly to NASDA as a whole. So thank you. We'll welcome you, and we'll turn the floor over to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kettler. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate you inviting me to be with you guys today. As you mentioned, I am still relatively new to EPA. I joined on March 16th. So basically the day, it felt like the world shut down a little bit. But it's been a great experience so far. Prior to joining EPA, I had spent 16 years on Capitol Hill, where I worked extensively on agriculture policy. So this role here at EPA has been a really great transition, and to be able to continue working on issues of importance for agriculture and rural America, which is where my heart is, has been really rewarding. So I'm very appreciative that Administrator Willer and President Trump gave me this opportunity. But for those of you who may not know about the role of the Agriculture Advisor here at EPA, we serve as the primary advocate and liaison for U.S. agriculture at EPA. We have the Ag Advisor's Office here, and we also have an Ag Advisor in each of EPA's 10 regional advisors that work with you on a local level. I'm sure many of you know your regional Ag Advisor, but if you do not, please reach out to me after this. I'd love to connect you with them. They are really a great resource to getting questions answered or getting problems solved. You know, one of the reasons I wasn't excited about joining EPA is because President Trump has been really clear about the administration's commitment to agriculture in rural America through reinstating membership of the Farm, Ranch, and Rural Communities Committee, which will provide recommendations on policies coming out of the agency, to welcoming farmers through the door. We've had a lot of farmers who've said that this is the first time they've come to EPA, and we're sad that COVID has stopped that a little bit, but we have really taken advantage of opportunities like these to continue to engage. But we're making sure that there's a seat at our table for farmers and ranchers. EPA's mission is to protect the environment and public health, and we know that farmers and ranchers are the original stewards of the land, and they are and should be our natural partners. I know you guys wanted to hear an update on some of the issues that are happening here at the agency, so I'll touch on a few things, but then leave a lot of time for some questions at the end as well. We at EPA are really working with the agriculture community to achieve a better environment, while also giving farmers and ranchers the necessary tools to continue to provide safe, and healthy agricultural products to continue to feed and clothe the world. 2020 is a pivotal and very busy year in the pesticides program, as proposed interim decisions, numerous interim decisions will be completed for a lot of high profile, widely used chemicals this year. There are several products with open comment periods, and I cannot emphasize enough the importance of submitting comments to EPA. We really need to hear from you as our co-regulators. We need to hear from farmers and ranchers how they use these products and to help us make the best decision that we can make. There's a lot of work to do, and we hope to deliver on a decision on Dicamba by this fall. We are very well aware of the Ninth Circuit decision and how that impacted the growing season for many farmers and ranchers, and we worked really closely with NASDA when that was happening as we finalized our cancellation order. While it was very unfortunate, the court decision, we're very pleased that the court upheld our cancellation order so that farmers and ranchers could still use the product that they had already purchased. And we are continuing to look at all the data right now as we consider a new registration decision. One of the things many of you may have seen is that yesterday EPA proposed a rule to streamline the regulation of certain plant incorporated protectants, or PIPs. And these are PIPs that pose no risk of concern to humans or the environment. This action will be available for public comment for 60 days, and I encourage you all to comment on it. EPA's proposed exemptions for PIPs, created through biotechnology, seek to facilitate the development of new tools for American farmers to protect their crops and control pests. Under the proposed exemption, we would require developers of PIPs to submit either a self-determination letter or request EPA confirmation that their PIP meets the criteria for an exemption. A developer could also submit both if they would like to, for that kind of certainty as well. But EPA, we estimate that the cost savings for a single PIP exemption would be between $400,000 to $450,000. And the majority of these savings would be from fees associated with submissions of registrations or applications. Another place that we've been doing a lot of work this year is on water. And one of the ways that we have worked to restore trust with the agriculture community is in fulfilling President Trump's promise to repeal and replace the Obama administration's onerous and overreaching regulation known as the Waters of the US. In April of this year, we published the final navigable waters protection rule in the Federal Register that went into effect on June 22nd. The final navigable waters protection rule provides certainty to farmers, landowners, and ranchers by defining what is and what is not a navigable water. EPA's new definition rebalances the relationship between the federal governments and the states in managing land and water resources, and makes it clear that the following are not a waters of the US: many ditches, including roadside and farm ditches, farm and stock watering ponds, and prior converted cropland, just to name a few examples. Thanks to our new rule, our nation's farmers and ranchers and other landowners can refocus on providing the food and shelter and commodities that Americans rely on every day. This is better than hiring lawyers to determine whether water is on your own land or under control of the federal government. In August of this year, we also announced nearly $5 million in research on managing PFAS, the chemicals of concern in agricultural operations and rural communities. Additionally, $5 billion is available through the WIFIA program and FY20 for eligible water and wastewater infrastructure projects. So we really want to be working with rural communities to provide them with the tools they need in the toolbox. Another exciting development was in February of this year. Administrator Wheeler, along with federal, state, and local water leaders, announced the release of the National Water Reuse Action Plan. The National Water Reuse Action Plan seeks to promote the consideration of water reuse as a tool to improve the security, the sustainability, and the resilience of the nation's water resources. It builds on more than 4 decades of water reuse experience and promotes a growing collaboration of action among federal, state, local, and private sector reuse efforts. And we really want to help identify new leaders and partners. This is not an EPA or a federal plan. It represents a collaboration from across the water user community, which many farmers and ranchers are, and your states are as well. And I'd be happy to connect any of you to the Water Reuse Action Plan team so that your state staff can work with them in this collaborative efforts. Together, we can ensure the sustainability, the security, and the resilience of our nation's water resources. Like you, at EPA, we understand that farmers and ranchers are original conservationists. I know that President Eisenhower's words still hold true today. The farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles away from the cornfield. Administrator Wheeler and President Trump understand that we need to streamline regulatory compliance for our agriculture community. We know that can be confusing to people on what laws and regulations apply to their farm. That's why, as a resource, EPA created an online table which lays out the laws and regs that apply to operations by their farm activities. Recently, Administrator Wheeler penned an op-ed that was in Newsweek, and I want to quote him here because I thought part of it was very powerful. He said that, quote, "Americans have carried the burden of our government's heavy-handed approach to environmental regulation for far too long, with rural communities bearing the brunt. When President Trump took office, he immediately began a process to remove and replace undue regulatory burdens that stifle American innovation and economic development, directing agencies to issue at least 2 deregulatory actions for every new regulatory action. EPA has exceeded this goal, taking 5 cost-saving deregulatory actions for every one of new regulation implemented," end quote. And we know it's working. During this administration, air pollution has fallen 7%, and our water is some of the cleanest on planet. And I know our partnership with NASDA and our farmers and ranchers have contributed to our shared environmental success story. So I look forward to taking some questions from y'all. Thank you for your time. And I will say too, if I can ever be of help or assistance, please feel free to reach out to our office at ruraloutreach@epa.gov.
Thanks, Carrie. Appreciate that. And again, we look forward to working with all of you. We'll open it up to questions. I've got one real quick one, and then maybe Commissioner Hurlburt has one, and other members. So you mentioned the regional. You've got regional ag advisors in addition to yourself, of course, in Washington, D.C. Help us better understand, when is it appropriate? Do we need to reach out to those regional advisors? What kind of things would they be able to help our membership with?
I think they can help from everything with, I'm sure you guys get calls from farmers too, concerned about when a pesticide decision is going to come down. I will give an example that happened. I joined the agency during the beginning of COVID, and there were a lot of things that came up during that. And our regional ag advisors were the front line on answering those questions and getting those filtered back up to us here at headquarters. So whether those were questions on milk dumping or carcass disposal, we were able to work hand in glove with local communities to try to solve those problems.
Good. So even so say for example, in something like the Dicamba decision, where each state has their state labels and things were a little different there. Is it better to communicate, say, with you, to the regionals, do both in some of those kinds of situations?
I think you can do both. My door is always open, and I have a call every week with the regional ag advisors. Okay. So we're in constant communication. A lot of them, I talk to them throughout the week too, because I really see them as an extension of our work here. We're all one team. So whoever you contact will get an answer for you.
Okay. And you had mentioned the list. Frankly, it might be good to share that. If you've got the list of regional ag advisors, share that with Zach, and we can get it to the members. I think we know people move around on both sides of this equation on a regular basis. So I think making sure that we've got that updated list would be useful and very helpful to everyone. So thank you for that. So Commissioner Hurlburt, you have a question, or we'll open it up to membership, but if you do, go ahead.
I do. Just briefly, thank you, Carrie, for that and for the work that you're doing on behalf of agriculture and the communication. And as Director Kettler mentioned, getting that list would be helpful for all of us in the different states to be aware of. But I would also suggest, Dr. Glenn, that we include the regional EPA contacts out of regional meetings and make sure that they're aware of what's happening. I think establishing that relationship would be really helpful for these times when we get these pop-up questions. We did a lot of scrambling here in Connecticut, like I know a lot of people did at the beginning of COVID to figure out where those resources are and where they're located, how to get in touch with them, and establishing that relationship in I'll do air quotes, of a normal time, allows us to respond better to our needs during these crisis times. And I just have one final comment that Dr. Glenn, I recognize Zach as a great addition to the team. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge a former Connecticut Food Export Northeast intern, Sage Saffron, who's working with NASDA. So Dr. Glenn, you just picked the greatest talent out there in America, and really appreciate those efforts. So Sage, great to see you again. I saw you pop up earlier. I don't mean to embarrass you, but I do want to acknowledge that you have a great work
No,
to
you're
contribute
totally
to the
fine.
rest of NASDA. And that's, Director Keller, that's all I have.
Okay, great. So we'll let's open it up. Are there other questions for Carrie from the membership? And if so, unmute yourself and please, identify your obviously name and state where you're from, please. Particularly for the members, NASDA members. Now, I know you wouldn't be this shy if we were in person. Surely
This is Ben Thomas in Montana.
Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge our regional, Rebecca Perrin, I believe it is. She's been incredibly helpful. She's able to get back with us within a day. So I do encourage the other states to build that relationship, because it's been great for us here in Montana. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate the comment.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Thomas. Rebecca is great, and she is, all of our ag advisors are just as great as Rebecca, but we're really lucky to have them on the team.
Other questions or comments about EPA from the membership?
Mr. Chairman, this is Russell Redding. Carrie, good to see you. We want to, first of all, thanks for the continued work with the Region 3, particularly around the Chesapeake Bay issues. We've made some investments. We appreciate that. One of the standing challenges I think we have in Pennsylvania, of course, is trying to meet the TMDL for the Chesapeake Bay. But part of our work really is recognizing what you had shared in your comments about the farmers and the environmental stewardship philosophy that is part and parcel to being in this business. And just would encourage sort of continued effort between the EPA and the USDA, particularly around NRCS data. If there's one thing that I will continue to sort of advocate, is just trying to find a way to take the information that's with FSA and NRCS and have that available for sort of documentation and further proof of the work that is being done in agriculture. You're aware of just the challenge we have of verification and documentation of the data sets. And we keep saying that there's a lot more conservation on the ground than there is accounted for within the Chesapeake Bay model. So just asking that be raised to your level and continued conversations with your colleagues within the department, as well as the USDA. Thank you.
And I will share, part of my 16 years on the Hill was 11 years with Congressman Bob Goodlatte from Virginia, who was in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So I spent a lot of time on that issue. I know the frustration that farmers and ranchers have. I think we've come a long way over the last several years, having a more cooperative relationship and being more collaborative with them. I think we've done a lot more to train inspectors who are going out to their conversations with farmers and ranchers are more collaborative, and they know how a farm works. I know we had gotten some, when I was still on the Hill, we heard some not great stories about that. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to do that work. But we've had that conversation. There are a lot of things that farmers and ranchers are doing because it's good business sense for them. They live on this land. They want to make sure that their land is healthy, the water is clean, and they're doing it because it's good stewardship. It's not because we're mandating them to do it. So how do we better capture that data of what they're doing voluntarily? And it's definitely a conversation that we're continuing to have, and happy to chat with you more offline about it too.
So Carrie, one other question, you mentioned something I think we would have some interest, certainly our members on a decision that you all are working on, but also others in the ag community. You mentioned a decision on Dicamba in the fall. The fall's a big time. Can we pin you down to understand, is that, we're assuming it's fall of this year, right?
Yes, I can
Okay,
tell you fall
right.
this year. I can give you a little bit more background just
Thank you.
You all know how we've got to the point that we're at. When the court vacated the registrations, we were no longer in a position where we could just re-register the products. We had to have new applications in from the registrants who wanted us to consider products. So that in and of itself delayed us. We are very aware of the growing season. I think in a perfect world before the court decision, probably would have already had a decision out, but that's just not the reality that we're living under. And one of the things that the administrator has been very clear on is making sure we're looking at what the court said and how we can answer questions as we're considering those registrations for the court, but to make sure we're being very mindful of not putting growers in the same position that they were in last year. And so there's a lot of work being done right now behind the scenes. And
Carrie, I don't know if you can hear us. I think we maybe lost you, certainly lost audio. All right, we'll see if we can get her back. Pretty good indication we need better connectivity in the world, don't we? So, okay. All right. Since we don't have Carrie, we'll just kind of open it up to the membership. We've got just a couple minutes here. Are there any other particular topics, particularly around the Plant Ag and Pesticide Regulation Committee? We don't have, by the way, we don't have any policy amendments or action items from this committee that we need to worry about. So just to let the membership know that we don't have any, we didn't receive any out of the regional meetings either. So if there's any particular questions, Commissioner Hurlburt, you have some?
I just, since we have a couple minutes left, I know Zach's been working with USDA and with members on the Hill regarding hemp, and that's been a hot topic for this committee. I don't know if he wants to take a minute just to update folks with where that's at.
Absolutely, sure, Commissioner. So Max and I have been working hard with the policy team to work both with USDA on utilizing their enforcement discretion on the 1031 deadline coming, and then also doing Hill engagement. On the Hill side, there's a huge appetite to push back the deadline, and they've been very receptive. The one thing that may potentially be the obstacle in our way is finding the vehicle for the Hill to put the language in. Originally we thought it would be the next round of CARES Act. That legislation may not come timely. The other was appropriations. We don't know if that'll happen before the October deadline. So we're currently trying to find a vehicle to put the language in to give the extension. But the Hill has been very responsive. We have worked with some of our partners in the private sector or, in the industry to draft some letters, both to the Hill and to USDA. So priority number one is pushing the October deadline back, and then we will go back and work on the DA testing and some of the other issues that we had listed in our federal comment before. So that's kind of our quick update given the time that we have.
Great, thanks, Zach. And any other questions or comments from the members? If so.
Yeah, Commissioner, this is Fred Strathmeyer, Deputy Secretary. I was there last year. Glad to see you all again today. Zach, on that subject, there are states that have submitted their plans. As much as there's also this conversation of pushing back the date, what are you sensing as far as the consequences to the states that are already adhering to the Farm Bill?
Sure, Deputy Fred. So I think the best way I can answer that is the NASDA position has just been an extension to the end of the year. That's what we've asked for. I will say that we've heard from other stakeholders, not NASDA, that have asked for much longer extensions. But I can speak to what the policy team has asked for just 90 days. So I hope that does that answer your question. If not, I just want to make sure I understand you. I just want to make sure I'm communicating what our position is, if that makes sense.
No, it's fine. That's fine, Zach. Thank you.
We have Carrie back, Director Kettler.
Yeah.
I am so sorry about that. I was talking and I realized everyone was frozen on my screen.
Not a problem. We're glad to have you. Thank you. Was there anything else in particular you wanted to finish up on?
I don't know where I cut off on the Dicamba decision.
Well, I think you were about to give us a particular date. I think that's where you were.
Well, I can tell you, we have the new registrations applications in. We're reviewing them. The administrator wants us to be very thoughtful as reviewing them so that farmers do not end up in the same position they were this year with chaos during the middle of the time everyone's spraying. So we are being very thoughtful as we look at them, but we're also very mindful of the time of the year it is and that farmers are already making decisions for what they're buying for next year.
Great, thank you. Thanks again, Carrie, appreciate it. And we'll look forward to getting that list of regional folks and appreciate your consideration on that. So
yes.
I think by my clock, we're a minute past our allotted time. So we're going to shut this down. Appreciate everyone's participation. As always, if there's anything you need, welcome to get to me, Commissioner Hurlbert, and certainly Zach, and we'll take care of you. So thank you, everyone.